Okay, so now let's not proceed to the next topic is the theory, theoretical, theoretical and empirical basis of the research. So here we will talk on review of related literature and the conceptual framework. By the end of the session, the learner should be able to identify the uses of the review of related literature in research, describe the steps involved in conducting a review of related literature, discuss important guidelines to be remembered in conducting and writing up the results of the review of related literature, and describe how to formulate the conceptual um, framework for the research he or she wishes to undertake. Okay, so what is a review of related literature? Okay. A review of related literature is a survey of scholarly materials, mga published journal, articles, books, thesis and dissertations, conference proceedings, reports, lahat yon relevant to the area of research being proposed. It provides a concise description and critical evaluation of work which has already been done on the research area of interest. And it aims to answer important questions about the research to be conducted. Research to be conducted. What is already known about the research area being proposed? What are the existing theories related to this area of research? What are the known characteristics and relationships of the main factors or variables related to the proposed research area? What research designs or methods were used and which of them seem unsatisfactory? Yun yung mga possible questions that you need to consider in reviewing related literature. And the literature review is a very important phase of the research process because it has several uses to the researcher in all phases of the research, from project conceptualization to report writing. Okay? One of the, the following are the uses of the review of related literature, RRL. It provides the researcher background information about previous studies conducted in terms of who has done previous work in the research area, what important ideas, theories, questions, and hypotheses have already been investigated and tested, what research methods were utilized, what problems were met and how were they solved. Okay? Next is it helps the researcher in determining if the proposed research is actually needed. Kailangan pa ba yung studyhin? Okay? In narrowing down or refining the topic and research objectives initially formulated. Okay? And in generating hypotheses or questions to be studied further. Another one, it guides the researcher in the development of the conceptual framework for the research in terms of identifying relevant variables which need to be considered in the study. Dapat alam nyo kung ano yung independent variable, ano yung dependent variable, alam nyo yung possible controlling variable, okay? And in determining the direction or nature of the relationship between relevant variables. Okay? It provides values of important parameters needed in formulating the design for the proposed research, like the anticipated values of and variances of important parameters to be estimated, which are needed for sample size determination. Like for example, if you are investigating nursing students in Region 8, okay, meron ba mga literature na nag-study rin ng mga nursing students in a particular region? Ilan ba yung kinuha? Kaya kinuhang sample to be part of the study. would that sample appropriate? Would that be a good reference ng inyong study here in Region 8 na ganyan din yung number of samples na kukunin mo? Yun. Yun yung point doon. Okay? Next is it provides comparative data which the researcher can refer to later in the discussion of results and conclusions of the study. Okay? So in your discussions and results, your collected review or related literature, you can use that in comparing or contrasting with your results, okay, and discussions in chapter 4. So what are your steps in conducting a literature review? Number 1, formulate the research problem and objectives. Okay? The research problem and objectives determines the coverage of the literature review. So, yung basihan mo ng inyong literature review, yung research problem and objectives. Number 2, conduct the literature search. So, you have so many research bases as a student of UP because we have the VPN, the virtual private network. But once we connect with our VPN, we can have access in many research databases such as in Science Direct, in ProQuest, in EBSCO. Alam niyo ba yon?
Hindi, sir.
Po, sir.
Hindi niyo alam yon?
No, sir.
Hindi po.
I will have a separate session in using the VPN in tawag ito in accessing our research databases. But take note of your ads account. Alam niyo yung ads account ninyo?
Yes po, sir. Nasa search may ginsan na to ha email naman.
Yeah, okay. Sige. Kasi yung ads account ninyo that will be your parang passport to access the VPN. Okay, we will have that separate session.
Sige po, sir.
Kaya, bukas is hindi ako pwede. Wednesday siguro, Wednesday. Okay? Para next week, meron na kayo chapter 1, chapter 2. Okay? Actually, kung wala kayong VPN, you can have literature search in the Google Scholar or in the PubMed. May mga free doon, kaya lang hindi lahat. Then number 3, read the literature side by side with the research process. And what the researcher reads will guide subsequent searches and refinement of the topic. Number 4, note down important questions or issues or hypotheses which were mentioned by the literature reviewed or which came to the researcher's mind as he read the literature. Okay? These questions, issues, or hypotheses can be used later in the research when the implications of the findings are discussed and new research directions supported or suggested with the findings will be recommended. Next, keep a record. Okay? What, where, when of the literature reviewed. Kasi kailangan yan cited. Okay? Kailangan yan nasa references ninyo. It is better to record too many references initially than to spend and waste the time later to relocate or search for documents already reviewed. So kung meron kayong nahanap na related na mga study, download it immediately. Now, meron na kasi yung pangmadalian way in the references or in the citation. You can have your citation manager software. Next, you have to organize, analyze, and evaluate literature reviewed. Okay? This means taking notes as the researcher reads each document on the following information: the purpose of the objectives of the RRL, the summary of content, the research design, or method skills of the study, or the important findings. Okay? After that, note-taking results can be organized into common themes. This can be done by using index cards or presenting them in a tabular form. It will then be easy to integrate and synthesize findings after the results are organized. Okay? And then prepare a write-up of the literature review. The write-up can consist of several subsections, which with previous studies organized according to the common themes. And of course, and last, you have to create a bibliography or the list of references. Alam niyo rin ba yung mga formats ng referencing like your APA, MLA, alam niyo 'yon?
Di pa, sir.
Okay, so dalawa na yung utang ko. Yung VPN, tapos yung referencing. Okay, let's proceed muna. Important points to remember about the review of written literature. The literature to be reviewed must not only be related to the topic of the research but also on the specific objectives actually covered. Kung meron kayong nahanap na makakasupport doon sa isang research objective mo, kahit hindi siya totally related, pero sa study, pero related doon sa objective, you can have that. Okay? There are no hard set rules regarding the number of literature to be included in the RRL, how old or new are the materials to be covered, or the proportion of local compared to international studies to be presented. These are all dependent on the topic of the research and how well it has been studied locally and abroad. So, kung kung yung topic mo ay well researched, your RRL must be from the last 5 years of publication. So kung in 2021, so from 2017 to 2021 na mga research articles ang gagamitin mo. Okay? It is important to ensure the accuracy of the information you presented in your RRL. And the bibliographic citation should be complete enough to enable a reader to track down the article if they wish to do so. If the research being proposed is pioneering and no previous studies have been done in the area, this has to be mentioned in the review of related literature to provide additional basis or justification for the conduct of the proposed research. So, M. Let's now proceed to the development of the conceptual framework. The conceptual framework is a written or a visual presentation which explains graphically, in narrative form, or both, the main variables being studied in the proposed research. It serves as an organizing framework for descriptive studies or a representation of how the different variables are interrelated to each other in analytic studies. The development of conceptual framework is done after the review of related literature and before the formulation of the research objectives. There must be consistency between the conceptual framework presented and the research objectives to be investigated. Inputs needed in developing the conceptual framework. In order to develop the conceptual framework, the researcher needs his experiential knowledge of the proposed research area, which includes his technical knowledge, research background, and personal experience. Another very important input in the development of the conceptual framework are the results of the literature review. This includes findings in the prior related um, theory, concepts and relationships that are used to represent the world, what is happening and why, or prior related research, how people have tackled similar problems and what they have learned, and other theory and research include approaches, lines of investigation, and theory that are not obviously relevant nor previously used. Usual practices in developing the conceptual framework. In building the framework, start with the dependent or outcome variable or endpoint for intervention. Identify potential independent variables deemed to affect the dependent or outcome variable based on empirical, wait lang, wala. Based on empirical or theoretical evidence, identify intervening, confounding, antecedent, or mitigating variables whose effects may alter the relationship between the dependent and independent variable. And then variables are presented in boxes while relationships are presented by arrows. Logical presentation of concepts is from left to right or top to bottom, and then concepts are labeled briefly and concisely. So, yun yung guide mo ng paggawa ng conceptual framework. Okay? So, that's it. Thank you.